Wassalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you. And thank you so much for having me here. There's also a lot of my wife is from Bethesda originally, so there's some family and friends, and so I'd like to send a welcome or thank you from my family. I'd also like to thank the George Mason University and Sarah for a great introduction. I've got to spend some time with some of the students today, and this is it's been a wonderful day today here on the campus. I'd also like to thank the Masons chapter of Amnesty International, and I'd like to thank Congressman Connolly, and also he mentioned the Pakistani Student Association and the Afghan Student Union. I both had the chance to meet them, and they're doing some really great stuff, and they have some upcoming fundraisers to help build. They want to set up some schools in Afghanistan, so it's really exciting to see that. And to the fall for the book festival, and it's just a great honor to be here. I thought everybody wants to talk about current affairs and politics and all that stuff, so I thought I'd get all that stuff out of the way really first, so we can talk about the real important issues about education and about tolerance and peace and everything. So there was a very devastating flood in Pakistan recently. Over 20 million people displaced, about 3 million homes destroyed, 6,000 schools, and it goes on and on. It's very catastrophic. And one of the concerns, or that bothered me a little bit, is that the U.S. aid appropriated to Pakistan was first based on how it relates to our security. You know, the crisis is so devastating and so catastrophic that I think sometimes we need to rise above that. And what's really about is about compassion. It's about helping millions of people who are suffering, and not just trying to justify humanity, or say terms of helping or the amount of money, and how it's going to relate to our security or terrorism or other things. In Afghanistan, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the issues of pulling the troops and the surges and all that stuff. Last year, President Obama doubled, in the last 18 months, he's doubled the amount of troops in Afghanistan from 50 to 100,000 troops. The Operation Enduring Freedom budget for Afghanistan, this is the military DoD budget, was $72 billion, and recently Congress appropriated $30 billion more. So it's about $100 billion, which equals about $1 million per soldier per year. I spoke recently to Minister Farouk Wardak. He's the Minister for Higher Education in Afghanistan. And I asked him, what would be your dream budget to fund the entire higher education in Afghanistan? How much do you need to fund these 24 universities in your country? So he said about $274 million. And he told me he was only going to get about $50 million. So he's got to figure out how to do this with $50 million. So an idea I had is to pull 274 troops and have a big press conference and give Mr. Wardak a $274 million check to fund the higher education. Also, there was $1 trillion of mineral resources discovered in Afghanistan: molybdenum, copper, lithium. So why doesn't the U.S. spend $5 million to set up a school of mines and technology in Afghanistan? About half of the states in this country have a school of mines and technology. We could help train Afghan mining engineers so that in 20 years they wouldn't be exploited by Iran, Russia, and Russia and China, and even the U.S. They would have their own mining engineers. It would cost about $5 million. The other thing that, in 3 Cups of Tea, those of you who read it, after 9/11, I went to the Pentagon a couple times, and I was actually fairly critical of the military. I'm a veteran, I was in the Army, but I said, all I saw was laptop warriors. There are no boots on the ground. Nobody speaks Pashto or Urdu or Dari or anything else. But I can tell you today, in many ways, the U.S. military really gets it. Many of our soldiers have been in Afghanistan, Iraq, 3, 4, even 5 times. I was at Fort Drum, their 5th deployment since 9/11. And what they understand is it's about building relationships. It's about empowering the shura, the elders. And it's also about really working with the people. The example I'd like to share with you is last year, because of the surge, we wanted, as the general public and our leaders, you want something to happen, right? You double troops in the country, you expect something should happen now, right? So there was a massive military operation planned in southern Afghanistan from Kandahar all the way to Chaman, Pakistan, to drive a swath through the southern areas of Afghanistan and rout out the shadow Taliban governments and bring more government there. This operation was called Operation Omid, and in Pashto, Omid means hope. There was a lot of planning involved, and then there was the time for the McChrystal report, etc. But when General McChrystal first became the commander in Afghanistan, he asked me and another person to set up meetings between the Shura, these are the elders, and himself. And he'd like to, and just to explain this, in Afghanistan there are 34 provinces, and every province has 50 to 200 Shura. These are elders, they're leaders, they're poets, they're warriors, they're businessmen, there's even a few women there on the Shura, and who are Shura. And over the course of a year, we facilitate about 36 meetings. And the Shura were sometimes very emphatic about issues like bombing, killing civilians. Some of them said we want weapons. Some of them said we don't want weapons. But the other thing they really insisted on is that they be involved in decision making. And they told General McChrystal, if you do this operation, you're going to take a high amount of casualties. It's not going to succeed because you don't have relationships, you don't have networking, you have not consolidated the support of the people before you do this. So we think this is really not a good idea. So General McChrystal contacted somebody in D.C., up here in Capitol Hill, and he said, we need to delay this operation. And I really think it's wonderful, too, that General Petraeus, when he came into power, after General McChrystal was relieved, he decided to cancel Operation Omid. It was the first time in the last 9 years that the elder and the Shura have been involved in a decision of that proportion, and it was really great that they were being listened to. In June, President Obama summoned a meeting in the White House for a couple hours, and he wanted to know what are the elders saying in Afghanistan. But the irony, he asked the military to advise him what the elders saying. Now, I would have suggested Skype the elders, but didn't do that. And so they had a meeting, and then President Hamid Karzai decided, I better do the same thing. So July 2nd to 5th, 1,400 elders came to Kabul, and they had a meeting. And I think therein is really an important lesson about that we really work with the people we entrust, the elders, and glean from them. And I can also tell you, having several meetings with many of our military commanders, Admiral Mike Mullen, Chairman Joint Chief of Staff, General Petraeus, General McChrystal, Admiral Eric Olson, Commander of Special Forces, they will all tell you there is no military solution in Afghanistan. Now, they're not admitting victory or defeat. What they're saying is the solution is a much broader solution. And I think us, the general public, we are putting far too much emphasis and pressure on our military to solve all our problems. And it's really unrealistic to expect a soldier today to be a diplomat, a humanitarian, and a warrior. I'm just a humanitarian, a little bit diplomat, and I can't even handle my own job. Imagine some 18-year-old kid who has to be all these, savvy and culturally savvy and everything. So, and then what I'll get into later on is there's actually a lot of good things happening in Pakistan, Afghanistan. I really like to highlight that. We read about all the negative things and the disasters and the casualties and everything, so I'm going to really emphasize that. Before I start here, I'd like to share a 10-minute DVD with you, and it's called Stones into Schools.